Alright, so we're going to get started with our Twitter clone. So through this video series, I'm going to basically walk through how to create a pretty close match to Twitter's interface from scratch. When I tell you from scratch, we're going to use Bootstrap CSS framework to do this. So there's going to be a number of videos. In the description are links to specific elements or components. So if you're trying to catch up and you need to see a specific element, the profile photo or the tweet button or something like that, look for that in the description, and the links to the other videos as well. So in this first video, we're going to cover the navigation bar, the cover photo, the profile photo, and the rest of the things in that kind of white bar there, the statistics and the follow button, etc. So, okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So let's just take a look real quick at Twitter, just so we have a feel for what we're going to need to do. So we've got this navigation bar here at the top. Pretty simple, it's fixed, so it stays in the same place as we scroll, same place in the window, that is. We've got this cover photo. It's a large photo. They've got kind of a parallax effect where when you scroll, the photo kind of moves a little bit. We're not going to worry about that. They've got a profile photo here that's a circle, kind of cool, with a little bit of a border or kind of some padding around it. They've got these tweet stats and this follow button. So that's what we're going to worry about for now. After that, we've got this 2-column layout. We've got some kind of profile information over here. Then we've got tweets over here on the right column. So, okay, so we're going to use Bootstrap. So to use Bootstrap, you're going to want to go to getbootstrap.com is their website. And you go to documentation right here to kind of see the documentation. Most of the stuff, this getting started kind of shows how to get started using Bootstrap. And then from there, we're going to spend most of our time in kind of this layout or content or component section over here on the right. That's where most of the documentation lives. The easiest way to get started with Bootstrap is to copy this link here that they provide for us. So they give us the link tag to use. You'll notice it's using an absolute URL from the Bootstrap CDN. So we're downloading their CSS from Bootstrap servers. So we don't have to download the actual file. We're just including it. There's also this integrity attribute, which provides a hash that tells your browser. It's a security feature telling the browser this is what a hash of the file that you should expect looks like. So the browser will verify that the file that it's downloaded actually matches that hash. So it's a way to just specify, this is what the file should be. So we're just going to copy this whole thing. If you click this little copy button here, it'll copy it. So let's pull up our HTML. So we need to start with the doc type. Doc type HTML. We're going to do our HTML tag. I think Bootstrap recommends that you also specify the language. So our lang equals en. That's an attribute that you can apply to your HTML tag to indicate the language that your page is in. Now we need a head. Within our head, we have to have a title. We're going to call this my Twitter page. Close our head. After that, we're going to have our body. And close our body. So we'll put our link from Bootstrap right up here at the top of our head. Let's also go ahead and add our style CSS. So over here on the left, here where our files are, we've got our index.html, and then I've got a style.css. That by default should be in your repository. So we're going to link to that. Just style.css. And there we go. They don't actually include that closing slash, so you probably don't need to. So you'll notice we're loading our own CSS after we've loaded Bootstrap CSS. So that is to ensure that we're able to overwrite stuff. So there's going to be some things that we're going to need to change, maybe the color of buttons, etc. So we want to load our CSS after Bootstrap CSS, so it's going to be a little bit easier to override things if we need to. We're also going to go ahead and load the JavaScript for Bootstrap. So again, just copy all of this. There's 3 script tags here. And again, they're loading them from external sources. So first they include jQuery. So jQuery is just a JavaScript framework that Bootstrap requires if you're using Bootstrap's JavaScript. There's also this popper.js. I don't actually know what that is, but it's some sort of dependency for the Bootstrap JavaScript. Curious what this is. We're working off of Bootstrap version 4, by the way. So if you've used Bootstrap before in the past, you're probably using version 3. They've upgraded very recently to version 4 that has quite a few changes. Nothing super major, but okay. So manage poppers and web applications. That doesn't really explain. Okay, tooltips, popovers. Gotcha. So this is just a library that they've included that they use. Anyway, if we go ahead and I think I've already copied those lines. Click this little copy button here and you'll copy all those 3 lines. You also notice they say place the following scripts near the end of your pages right before the closing body tag. So that's so that this JavaScript won't run until all of your HTML is loaded. So if you were to place these JavaScript includes in your head, it will actually load, as the browser renders your page, it goes just from top to the bottom in your HTML. So it's going to see your title, it's going to see your CSS, it's going to load your JavaScript, and it's going to execute that JavaScript. But at that point, your body actually hasn't been loaded by your browser yet. So there may be some things that are initiated in that JavaScript that need to be able to see what your the content of your page is. So that's why we always put our JavaScript right before the closing body. So right at the end of our page, we want these JavaScript files to be the last thing to load. So we're not really going to use any elements that really make use of the Bootstrap JavaScript. Things like their drop-downs or their modals require those JavaScript files to be included. So we're not going to need to do anything with them specifically. We're just going to go ahead and include them just to make sure we avoid any issues. So let's go ahead and put like a H1, my Twitter page, and save it. And then let's pull up the page, refresh, and make sure we see it. Cool. So we've got our H1 there, my Twitter page. Awesome. If you look at the Bootstrap documentation, there's a couple of additional things that they want you to include. So if you wanted to, we could have just copy and pasted this entire thing, but I kind of want to walk through each thing. So we've already dealt with the language on our HTML tag. There's 2 meta tags that they require as well. So this character set is just a meta tag indicating to the browser what character set your site is in. UTF-8, almost all websites are UTF-8, but we want to specify that just to be super clear to the browser what the character set is. There's also this viewport meta tag that tells your browser how to scale your page on different devices. So we're setting width to device width. Initial scale is 1. Shrink to fit, we're saying no. So by default, if you've ever looked at a non-mobile optimized website on your phone, it will shrink the entire page to fit, on your phone's screen. Bootstrap by default is a responsive framework. So everything that we do using Bootstrap is designed to be optimized for your screen. So if you're on a smaller screen, it's going to change your sizes so it's appropriate. It's going to hide some things and show some different things. So using this meta tag is telling your browser or your mobile device browser that this website is responsive and it's going to adjust itself based on the screen size. So we'll go ahead and include those meta tags. Usually I like to put them right after the title. So we've got those there. There's one other thing we're going to need to do. We're going to want to include, Bootstrap no longer includes an icon set. So if we look at Twitter, there's quite a few icons on here that we're going to want. So like, up here in this navigation, there's a little house icon, there's a little lightning bolt icon, a bell, etc. We're going to want to, find icons for those. The hard way would be to maybe find an image and that has a transparent background and scale it to fit. That would be kind of a pain. There's a better way of doing this, which is using an icon font, or there's different icon libraries that provide you with an icon set, and then you can choose. You can just place the icons that you want to use. There's an icon here too. These icons will need this little, person icon, etc. So a good option, since Bootstrap no longer includes one by default, is called Font Awesome. So if you go to Font Awesome, the easiest way to include it is using their CDN. Unfortunately, you need to provide your email address, and then they will email you the embed code to use. So you just put in your email address, you click send my embed code, and they're going to email that to you. So let me pause this real quick and grab that from my email. Alright, so this is what the email from Font Awesome looks like. So they give you this embed code here, so you can just copy this guy. And even though this is JavaScript, and we already talked about how most JavaScript you want to include your closing body, they actually just say to put it near the top of your HTML's head. This isn't actually, it's loading JavaScript, but that JavaScript is fetching some CSS and installing a font and doing these other things, not necessarily interacting with our page. So you can just put this right before your Bootstrap. So you should get a script just like this with source, is the Font Awesome domain, and then it gives you this, kind of personalized code to use to load the JavaScript file. Okay, so now we have Font Awesome. We're ready to use that. We'll deal with that here in a minute when we get to it. So the first thing that we're going to tackle is our navigation header up here, this nav bar. So Bootstrap actually makes this almost too easy for us. It's very simple to do. If you go to, whenever this is having some trouble, if you go to components in the Bootstrap documentation, wait for that to load, and then if you go scroll down over here to navbar, they have a navbar component. If you're not familiar with Bootstrap, we'll kind of learn it as we go. Essentially, I'll show an example here with alerts first of just roughly how it works. So basically, Bootstrap is a CSS framework, so we've included their CSS on our page, and it basically gives us a bunch of classes that we can use to build out certain styles and different components. So a good example is these alerts. So, they've got these different alerts here that kind of have a background, they've got some padding and a border, and then they've got several different colors of alerts. We've talked about how color can be an indicator of the meaning of content. So we might use blue for an informational alert that's not super urgent, but it's just kind of a reminder or something. Green for a success after a successful action. Red for like an error. Yellow for maybe a warning. That kind of thing. So they've got these alert components for us. And you use them just by using a normal div. And you just give it these alert classes. So you give it a class of alert, and then a class based on which type of alert you want to use. They've also got this role attribute, which is a accessibility thing, indicating to screen readers what exactly, what type of an element this is, that it's an alert. So this role isn't exactly necessary. The main thing here are these classes. So you can use, alert and alert-danger or alert-warning to indicate which type of alert you want. That's, most Bootstrap components are that way. We use a div or some other type of element along with a couple of classes to indicate what type of component this is. Buttons are another good example. We'll talk about those a little bit more in a second. They're using a button, which is an HTML5 element type of button. You can also use these with A's, but then in class, btn-primary for a button with our primary color. Bootstrap is also designed to be expanded on and extended. So that's one of the nice things. This isn't just like button-blue and button-red. It's somewhat of a semantic class indicating what the purpose of the button is: primary, success, danger, etc. We can override those in our own CSS. We could say, okay, I want all button successes to be a slightly different shade of green or something like that, and we can override that in our own CSS. So Bootstrap is meant to be kind of a base style. They do a lot of kind of the hard work. They've done some sizing for us, they've added some padding, they've made a background color, they've done a border, they've created a hover effect, they've given us a nice baseline style to use that we can expand upon to continually customize our site. They also have as you just scroll through, outline buttons. So if you do button-outline-primary, instead of having a background color, you get this outline effect. Firefox is there we go. As you hover, it changes the background color, so it's kind of cool. They also have button-large. If you want a large button, it just changes the sizing of it, etc. So pretty nice. Okay, so back to our nav bar. So if you go to the nav bar documentation here under components, eventually it will load. If you want to, I recommend reading this how it works. They kind of explain exactly how it works, exactly what you're supposed to do. We're going to kind of go down and get some of their demo HTML. So, as we kind of scroll through these different type of nav bars, that first one actually looked pretty close to what we need. Right here we go. They've got all different types, show how to use forms in your nav bar, which is nice. That one's good. That's pretty close to what we're going to want for Twitter with that search bar over there. Let's see. I think we're just going to go ahead and grab the first one. This loads. We'll just grab this first nav bar, and then we'll kind of remove the stuff we don't want. So again, they provide all the HTML for you. Roughly, we've got a nav HTML5 element with some classes on it. So nav bar expand large, nav bar light, background light. These are kind of classes that are affecting the the style of our nav bar. So if we click this copy button, and then we're just going to paste that HTML in our body. So we'll do replace our H1. We don't really need that H1 anymore. One kind of annoying thing, most of their examples use 2 spaces. So if your Atom is configured for 4 spaces as your tabs, you might want to kind of tab things over a little bit just to make it a little bit neater. I'm not going to worry about fixing the rest of them. So again, we've got our nav. We've got our nav bar brand, which is kind of our this is meant to be like your title. We actually won't need that. We've just got the links on Twitter here, so we can kind of get rid of this nav bar brand link here. This nav bar toggle button. This is the what we call a hamburger menu for mobile. So if you notice, here most of our navbar content is in this collapse, div class collapse, navbar collapse. That's indicating that on mobile, the whole nav bar should collapse, and you get an expand button to expand it. So if I just save this real quick and refresh our page just to show you what this looks like. So we've got our nav bar, it's great. The drop down even works because we've included the JavaScript. This is really nice that we've got this. If we downsize our screen to a mobile device, you notice it just collapses into this, again, what we call a hamburger menu, which you can click and it will expand our content. So that's really nice for, kind of customizing your nav bar for mobile. So we're going to leave this nav bar. Let's actually bring this nav bar brand back because I think, we can go ahead and get rid of it. So let's look again. If you really want to dig into what these classes do, I recommend that just to kind of understand better what we're doing. We're going to kind of fix the. If you just hit tab on these, it'll kind of fix this for you. So we've got a UL that's going to hold all of our links, our navbar nav. Then each LI has class nav item. We don't actually need this active class. This would be like if you had you were on a link that was active. So we'll remove that active class. We don't really need that. And then the A's inside here have this nav link class on them. There's also this span. This is a class, this SR only, will only display the text inside the span for screen readers. So it's really, really nice if you want to provide some contextual information for screen readers that may be visual. So in this instance, this home link is the active link by default. So see how it's a little bit darker than the other links? That's because it's the page we're currently on. You'll see this like on Bootstrap's navbar documentation. This is the page we're currently on, so it's the active link, so it's darker. But if you think about a screen reader, they're not going to be able to tell that this, documentation is, bolder and a different color than the rest of these links. So they include that text of current page for screen readers so that they know that that's the active navigation item. But we can get rid of that because we're not really too concerned about that for our Twitter clone. So now that we've got this one, let's go ahead and get rid of the rest of these. We don't really need these drop-down items for that drop-down link. We don't need this disable item. We're just going to clean this up a little bit, indent that properly, and then we'll just copy these. We've got 4 links, so we'll just copy this LI and paste it 4 times. And then our links that we need are home, moments, notifications, and messages. And this gives us the first opportunity to use our icons from Font Awesome too. So if we go to Font Awesome, again, sorry, this is fontawesome.io. You go to get started to, put in your email and get the CA link. And then if you go to icons, you can see all the icons that are available. Once this loads, the internet's been kind of slow today for some reason. Okay, so we can search for icons. So in this case, for home, we need kind of like a little house icon. So let's search for house. There's home with house. So if we click on that icon, we will see how we use it. So here's an example of the HTML we would use to include this home icon. So basically they use the I element, which isn't super semantic because this should be, you know, text that's italic, but they've kind of co-opted it to stand for icon. So you notice there's no actual content in the I tag, but they give it a class, and then, you know, in that CSS that we've included from them, they're adding I think they use, they do some fancy stuff to add the icon in when you've included this class. So all of Font Awesome ones will use FA to indicate that it's a font, or a Font Awesome icon, and then FA dash, and then the name of the icon. So we can just copy this. Also pull up this page so we can show some examples. But if we just copy this and put it here inside of our link, right before home, and then add a space, because we want a space between the icon. This ARIA hidden is indicating that for mobile devices, there's no content. We can just get rid of that. ARIA attributes are related to screen readers and accessibility, but we'll just go ahead and get rid of it for now to kind of clean up our HTML a bit. Okay, so if we check out our page, we should see our home icon, our little house. So that's pretty nice. It's not exactly, you know, what Twitter's is. It's not quite as cool, but it's going to work for us. It's good enough. Just to show, you know, there's some other cool things you can do with Font Awesome. You can change, you know, here's the basic example of, you know, including an icon. You can also add a class to make it bigger. We might want to make it a little bit bigger. Let's check. You know, that's pretty small. Twitter itself, it's a little bit bigger than the text, so we might include this FA-2X class. Oops. FA home and then FA-2X. So you can kind of similar to Bootstrap, where it's just extra classes that we can add. Now if we refresh, we'll see that home's a little bit bigger. It's actually almost too big, but we'll go ahead and stick with that for now. We'll have to do some moving around, but there's some other stuff you can do. You can do fixed width to, you know, make a fixed width if you were going to try and line up several things. You can actually use them to replace bullets in an unordered list. They have some animated icons you can use. You can rotate them, like FA-rotate-90 will rotate it 90 degrees. You can stack icons together. Pretty cool. There's some examples using, you know, some Bootstrap 3 stuff. So anyway, just some examples of things you can do with Font Awesome icons. But we need to find some other icons now. Go here. We need a little lightning bolt for moments, a bell for notifications, and email for messages. So if we go back, let's see. We search for lightning. Cool. We've got bolt. So again, we know the pattern that Font Awesome uses, so we can just use the same I here, along with our space, and then change FA home to FA bolt. For notifications, we needed a bell. We search for bell. There's this bell O, which is nice. Technically, they've got, it's like that, but the bolt isn't like that, and the home isn't like that, where it's kind of white in the middle. So we'll just go ahead and use the normal bell one. So we at least have a consistent look, even if it's not going to be super accurate. So FA bell, and I bet at our space there, we can even guess what the email one is going to be. Let's do FA mail. Let's see if that's correct. Refresh. Nope, apparently not correct. Search for mail envelope. Got it. So again, let's just go with the plain one. Even though this is more accurate to Twitter, we'll go with this option, envelope. I think I'm also going to remove these. They just seem a little too big. One cool thing in Atom, if you're using Atom, you can highlight some text and hit, at least on a Mac, Command D to also select other instances of that string. So we've selected all of the FA2X and then just hit delete and it'll go away. And then you just need to click somewhere. You see that you've got 4 cursors there. So if you wanted to, you could, hide some other stuff. But we don't need to do that in this case, so you just click away. So all we've done there is remove the 2X class just because they felt too big to me. So let's refresh. Okay, that's a little more appropriate. Even though, on Twitter they're slightly bigger than the font, we're a little closer here. Here than we were. So the next things that we need to think about are this Twitter logo. We've got our search bar. We've got our tweet button. So let's do, I bet Font Awesome has a Twitter icon. Cool, Twitter. So let's actually do, if we pull up the Bootstrap navbar documentation, can probably either use navbar brand. So let's copy. Let's do this one. No, let's just do this guy here, this link. So this is just our, let's just get the A here because we've already got the nav. So this class navbar brand is just used for kind of creating your main brand. It's just kind of a, you can use an image or you can use some text. So in our case, we're just going to use an image like this, except instead of using an image tag, we're going to use our icon from Font Awesome. So we don't need this in our UL here. We're just going to do this right outside of that. And then here we're going to do I class FA Twitter, close the I, and that should be all we need. Get our Twitter icon. Yeah, there we go. So there we go, Twitter icon. It's not, placed quite where we want it, but that's okay. We can deal with that a little bit later. We've got our search bar. We're going to leave that alone for now. We're going to change, on Twitter it doesn't actually have a search button. It just kind of fills in, as you type, it drops it down. So we're not going to really worry about that. But we've got this profile image. We'll worry about that in a second. But we're going to change our search button to this tweet button. So, and actually, let's just take this out of the form. And here, let's do an A class button primary, href. If you, for the links on this, we're not going to really worry about where they go. You can always just use the hash sign in your href to just kind of indicate an empty link. You don't have to give it any sort of, path, and then when you click on it, it essentially does nothing. Then we'll close our A, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's good. So we've got our tweet button. We obviously need to do some styling on these things to make them, look a little bit better and space some things out, but we've got a good start for a fixed nav bar at this point. Next thing, let's look real quick at one, we can change the color of our Twitter logo. Let's see if this is probably an image, so it's probably not going to help to inspect. By the way, you're free to feel free to inspect actual Twitter if you want to get things like colors or yeah, this is probably an image. Nope, there it is. There's the color. Not sure. They must create like a shape, I guess. Oh, it's probably a they're probably using an icon font, much like we are. Anyway, feel free to inspect if you want to get a specific color. You want to find an exact size or something like that. What I don't want you doing is just, copying, a bunch of CSS rules from the inspector, but feel free to inspect if you want to get a specific color. So let's pull up our, this is our navbar brand, so we can just take in our CSS, this is the very first CSS we've written, but we can do like .navbar brand and color that. We also maybe want to think about how to position it kind of centered between these elements. Could use the column layout if we wanted to. We might do something like on the A, we could do margin left 50%. No, that's not going to be what we want. We could try our margin 0 pixel auto. That's kind of getting us a little bit closer. It's not exactly, centered. Let's go ahead and do that just because you'll have to play around with it a little bit to get it exactly correct, but 0 pixels auto. Let's see if that at least changed the color. Again, you're going to have to tweak it to get it, exactly in the center if you really want to. Didn't quite. We might have to target the A. I mean the I. Like that. There we go. So we've got our Twitter logo colored correctly. Maybe we could use position relative to move it a little bit. Negative 100 pixels or so, maybe. You could also probably use, percents or something. That's getting a little closer. One other thing that I want to do, notice this, goes all the way, it's liquid, right? So it's full width all the time, whereas at least, at this size, there's actually a lot more space over here. So this is actually a 12-column container that's also in the nav bar. So they talk about that in Bootstrap here a little bit for containers. So you can either add a container on the outside of the nav bar if you want basically what we have now. Or actually, no, that would constrain the entire nav bar to be only the 12-column width. But what we want to do, we want the nav bar itself to extend, for the white background and stuff, but we want the contents of the nav bar to be constrained to our 12 columns. So what we'll actually do is put the container inside the nav bar, wrapping the actual contents of it. So we'll pull up our HTML. We'll put that right inside of our nav there. And then our closing there. This is getting a little bit, not going to worry about, well, space that over. I'm just going to kind of fix our, there we go. I guess technically we should probably take all of this as well and move it over. So let's see, I think that that's going to achieve what we're wanting. Yeah, there we go. So now it's, more constrained. We actually need to fix our Twitter icon now. So, maybe negative 50 pixels or something. I'm just going to kind of 40. Something like that. Pretty close. Let's do 25. And we'll add that to our CSS. I'm not exactly sure why centering it, with margin auto, it's not exactly centered. It probably has to do with the form or something. Anyway, but we're getting closer. Let's look at the search bar a little bit. So one, we need to change the background color. And then we also need to set a border radius. Let's see if we can get the exact background color here. Placeholder color, border, background color white. That's on hover or on active. Somewhere in here. Background color. So it's this F5, F8, FA. So let's look at our HTML. This is input class form control. Let's give it an ID. Search. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So now we want to target search, background color is that color. We also, on active, which is when the user is actually inputting, info, we want background color to be white, which is just FFF. Let's also go ahead and set a border radius. So border radius, to be, fully circle, it needs to be half of the height. And then I believe if it's more, it will just, stop at just being circular. But let's go ahead and test it out here and see what we can do. So like if you go to this computed, you can kind of see what the height is. That's showing, so it's 24 pixels high. So if we do border radius, what did we say, 25? So, like if we do like 10 pixels, that's getting a little bit closer. If we go over, anything over half of the height is just going to be circular. So we can make this 700 pixels and it's still just circular. So the minimum that we need would be, half of 25, so we can kind of round up, and we can do, I guess if we really wanted to, we could do 12.5. No, that's not going to work. 15. Let's just go ahead and make it 20. There we go. So that's pretty rounded. border radius 20 pixels. And let's see, the placeholder should be search Twitter. It's a little bit smaller, and it's not as bold. We'll actually change that here. We have the placeholder search Twitter. We're not going to worry too much about styling that. Styling placeholders is a little bit trickier. Also, so the border is a different color. It looks like it's about the same color as the Twitter logo, but let's double check when it's active. When it's not active, it has a really faint gray border. Let's see what we're looking for. Yeah, so this is, well, no, that's active, it looks like. Not seeing where that blue border is. Not crazy, right? Yeah, when you click on it, definitely has blue. It might be, oh, it should be just on the input. Let's just go ahead and make it the same as the Twitter. It looks like it's maybe 2 pixels or so. So on just regular, it's just a gray, right? So border 1 pixel solid. We can probably get the exact one from here. I think I saw it down here somewhere. Oh, there's the blue one. And yeah, it's 2 pixels. Oops. Here's not active. Is that color? Oops. And then on active, where'd that go? I just saw it for a split second. Maybe it had to be clicked into it. There we go. Nope. So it's probably using JavaScript to actually set that. That's why it kind of disappears. Gosh. Gonna do it quick. Okay, I think I copied it. You can just... Nope. I'm just going to make it the same. Border 2 pixels, solid, and take it this Twitter color. So let's make it the same. Let's see if this looks good. Search Twitter. We've got background. Notice the background of our nav bar needs to change. I think it's just white, right? Yeah, it's pretty close. It might be slightly off-white. Find out. Yeah, it's just white. But we're getting pretty close. Click on it. That's kind of strange. Oh, I think we want to do focus. Not active. Active is when you're actually clicking on it, and focus is when it's in focus. Let's see if that fixes it. Let's also change our background color of our .nav bar. Put that up at the top. It is white. Refresh. There we go. Looks like there's you know, some default stuff being added that would be nice to get rid of. It might even be like a shadow. Let's see if that's what that is. Bootstrap's adding some default styling for us. Yeah, okay, good. So yeah, it was adding box shadow all the way around. We don't want that, we just want the border color to change. Let's see, we didn't change the background color. Oh, it's being overridden. See, here's where important is annoying. It's really, really annoying that Bootstrap adds important to that, because changing the background color using important. So our we overwrote it, but important becomes, is the one that's actually applied. I believe there's actually some classes for color schemes. Never been easier, thanks to the combination of theme class and background color utilities. Great. So we'll do saying style, background color. I don't really understand. BG. Oh. BG primary. I guess this probably has that on it, doesn't it? Maybe if we just get rid of this BG light, that'll probably fix it. Oops. Let's see if that indeed. Okay, good. So now we've got the correct background color. Let's see here. Tweet button. So we want that to be different color. Looks like it's the same as this. Well, no, it's maybe a little bit lighter. We're using lots of different colors. Background color is this guy. We also want to do the border radius. So let's see what, get our class. Let's give it an ID. Tweet button. Save that, and now we can do tweet button, background color. Oops. That guy, color is just going to be white, which it might already be. I think also we want to make it bold. Yeah, that's already pretty close. So let's save that. See how it looks. Okay, cool. Let's do border radius on it as well. Let's try the same 20 pixels and see if that does it. So again, on border radius, to get a circle, it needs to be at least half of the height. But if you go over that, it just stops at being circular. It doesn't ever become more than that. The hover, on hover it's a little bit darker. This would be where if we were using HSLA, it'd be really nice. But if we inspect it, see where the hover background color is. There's this on focus. We can even we can click on this guy and we can just kind of pick a little bit darker color and select that. So maybe we don't care about being 100% precise. Background color, this guy, so this is 31809E, just a little bit darker version. I use the color picker for that. Font size could probably be a little bit smaller there, but overall we're looking pretty good. I don't really see much of a difference. Oh, that's because hover. There we go. Now I've got that darker color when we hover over it. This is looking good. Okay, oh, one other thing that I think I forgot to do, we need to do the nav bar fixed. So like if we took, if we added a bunch of text here, let's see. We copied some more of them just to see if it's fixed or not yet. Because on Twitter it is fixed, so it stays stationary, as we scroll on the page. So let's fill it up with some content real quick. That's not what I wanted. So let's just copy all of this content and put it there. Refresh. So we can see that our nav bar is not fixed. So they have a class for that. Bootstrap does that for us, so we don't have to worry about, doing position fixed on our own. I believe it's up here somewhere. Brand. Fixed. Just search. Okay, cool. Right here. Position utilities to place nav bars in non-static positions. Choose from fixed to the top, fixed to the bottom, sticky to the top, scroll to the page until it reaches the top. Fixed nav bars use position fixed, meaning they're pulled from the normal flow of the DOM and may require custom CSS, padding top on the body. Remember, we've talked about that a little bit in class. So we want to use fixed top. So here's an example of that. So we just add this class, to our HTML, to the nav bar, fixed top. Now if we refresh, the nav bar stays fixed to the top when we scroll, so that's great. Let's also do, I believe there's a little bit of, might even be box shadow. Suspect to find out, but it's probably just a little bit of box shadow there on the bottom of that. It's not showing us here. Probably have to go. Top bar. It might just be a little bit of border bottom. Looks like it's probably both. Yeah, for now, let's just add a little bit of border bottom. So we'll take this gray color that they have. So let's add that to our nav bar. Just help us distinguish, where the nav bar ends and where the content starts. If you really want to, match Twitter exactly, there's probably a little bit more going on than just that. But this is where we'll start. Just a little bit of border bottom. Yeah, that's something there. You can kind of tell. I'm going to even make it a little bit darker. Let's actually just make it like a 999 or something, kind of a darker gray. See how that looks. Yeah, that's better for now. So now you'll notice our body text here goes way up behind the nav bar, right? So we talked about this. When you do position fixed, it removes it from the normal document flow. So it's not going to have space left where it used to be. So in order to fix that, we want to look at what our height is, because that's what we're going to need to offset by. So it looks like it's about 57 pixels tall. So we can take our body and add margin top 57 pixels. And that should fix that issue. There you go. So now our content starts right after the nav bar. We might need to adjust this a little bit once we get a little further in. So we can take out our, test content here. We don't actually need that. Got some space. And we're good to go. Okay, so now that we have our header pretty good, it still needs a little bit of work, but we're getting pretty close. So let's go ahead and continue with the rest of our content. So first thing, I want to show you how to resize some images. So we've got our header image. Let's just look at how tall this needs to be. Using the inspector, once it loads. We want, this guy right here. So that's 300 pixels tall. So we want to make sure that our image is only 300 pixels tall. And it's 1168 wide. It's okay if it's wider, but we don't want it to be any taller than that. Otherwise, when we shrink it down to fit, it might get skewed. So let's use Pixlr. So Pixlr.com, Pixlr.com. This is great if you don't have Photoshop or something like that. If you have Photoshop, I'm assuming you can figure out how to crop and resize in Photoshop. But we're going to do Pixlr, so if you scroll down and do Pixlr Express, that's going to give you simple. Nope. Activate. Flash. And wait for it to load. Okay, we're going to upload from my computer. And I've already put the images in my repo. I think this one, yep, this is the header image I'm going to try and use. So, I've got a photo here. This is kind of normal photo sized. So to crop, I'm going to actually use this a ton. If we go to crop here, then we're just going to kind of grab these top corners and shrink it down. And you see here it shows you the height. We're just going to go down until we have around 300 in height. Now, you notice the width isn't quite wide enough. It's not as wide as we're wanting. So the way that this will actually get scaled up a little bit, because we're basically going to give it width 100%, and then we're going to have the container div be overflow hidden and kind of use that to constrain. So since we can't quite get it, we'll kind of just align it how we want here and go ahead and apply it. So that'll keep it from being skewed too much, but it'll still kind of show the main part of our photo that we want here. So we'll say cropped, save. I'm going to save it there. Okay, so, let's also do our profile photo. So Grab this one. We need a square photo. So for this one, it's a little bit easier. We don't really care about the we don't really care so much about the exact dimensions. We just need it to be square so that we can resize it, with our CSS, and it will be, it won't have to skew it or anything. So if you hit this 1:1 ratio here, that'll constrain it to 1:1. You can, resize a little bit if you want. Figure out, I guess we can, pull this and make it kind of centered. Yeah, kind of like it. So we'll go kind of right in there. Save. Cropped. Okay, so now that we've got our images that are cropped appropriately, let's think about how we want to do this. So we've got kind of this big, header section up here, that contains everything. Then within that we've got our cover photo, and then we've got these kind of the profile image and kind of this extra one that goes all the way across. So let's kind of sketch this out in our HTML. We can actually probably use the header HTML element. So let's use header. Then let's do a div with ID of cover image. And then we'll do a div of ID profile photo wrapper. And that's going to contain the other stuff too. And let's actually make this cover image wrapper as well. Sometimes using wrapper is indicating this div isn't actually the cover image, but it's the the wrapping div. So now let's just go ahead and do image source equals rows to crop.jpg. Make sure we put an alt just for accessibility. Cover image Rose being my daughter's name. This is her Twitter feed. She has a Twitter account now, apparently. So then for the profile photo, let's just put some text in here. Profile photo stuff, and we'll save that. So now let's also give. We can target the image as being inside this div, so we'll just leave it the way it is. So let's flip over here and see how it looks. I used the wrong one. There's one cropped. Oops. Okay, cool. So obviously it's not quite as wide as we need. So we're going to need to do some CSS here to make it 100% width. So let's go down here and say cover photo wrapper, and then actually image with 100%, and then let's also say the actual cover photo wrapper, height of 300 pixels, and overflow hidden. So that's going to, only show the 300 pixels. This is a good way to take an image that's roughly the correct dimensions and make it only take up a certain height. Especially something like Twitter where people can upload their own photos. They're probably not going to exactly fit what you want. So you might have used the wrong ID there. Oh, cover image. Actually, I'm just going to change this to photo, since I used photo for a profile photo. And, okay, cool. That's a good start. Now I've got our profile photo stuff. than everything under that. Let's do one thing real quick, just to kind of start to visualize the space on Twitter. You know, everything down here has a little bit different background color. Let's see if we can figure out what that is. Let's see here. Page container. Their HTML is a little bit confusing. We call it this profile canopy. Okay, I'm just going to keep going up. Not this one. It might just be on the body, actually. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This EC, or E6, ECF0. So we're going to do the same and apply that to our body. So let's go up here to the top. Background color is that. Now in our, we've got our profile photo wrapper. Background is white. It also had a border bottom, so maybe like 2 pixels solid, and I don't know, CCC or something. It's kind of a light-ish gray. Actually, probably is using, yeah, that's pretty close actually. So now obviously we need to set the height of this bar here, but we're getting pretty close. They're actually probably using a shadow. It looks kind of like a little bit of a shadow there, but we'll leave it as is for now. You can figure out the shadow on your own. Let's look at the height of this. Probably around 40 pixels or so. Inspect. And bar 60 pixels. So we can set that on our wrapper here. 60 pixels. Oops. Okay, cool. So now we need to add a profile photo. So let's do this too. If you look on the slightly scaled down version here, you'll notice from here to here is the same kind of 12 column. It's kind of within the container, the same way that our nav bar is. So we need to create a container inside this profile photo wrapper. So container, and then even inside here, we can create a 3-column layout. So let's create a row. Let's see, let's actually do 3 different columns. I guess they're about equal, here to here, and then here to here, and then here to here. So let's just do 3 equal columns like this. 1, 2, 3. See how that looks. Okay, good. Roughly what we're looking for. If anything, this 3 needs to be moved over a little bit, but we'll probably just float the follow button right, so I think it'll work out okay. So let's put in our image. So here we're going to do image source equals rows 2 cropped alt let's also give this an ID. Profile photo. In here is going to be some links and then the follow button, but let's worry about our profile photo first. If we refresh, we're going to get this very large profile photo. Let's see how big Bill Gates is here. If we inspect, .200 by 200. So this is going slow, but here, if you just, if you are hovering over, the image here, then you can see up here what the dimensions are. So let's take our profile photo and do width 200 pixels. We can set the height just to be sure. If we were to ever use an image that wasn't already square, but we know ours is square, so it's not technically necessary. That's okay. We're going to do border radius of 100 pixels. It has to be at least half. Anything over that, again, is going to be overkill and not have an effect. And then it's also got a border around it. Read 2 pixels, solid, white. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's a good start. It might actually be even a little bit more than that, maybe 4 pixels around. Yeah, they're actually they have a border here, I guess, around the 5 pixels. There we go. So now we need to position it. So we could do this, a couple different ways. We could maybe add margin bottom to push it up. We could position it relative. Both of those ways, however, is going to cause leftover space to be left where the image used to be. So for example, say after our profile photo wrapper here and after our header, we have some sort of text. Oops. If you refresh that here, oh, I didn't mean to open you, Siri. It's got, oops, what am I doing? This really isn't a good example. If we did an actual block level element, though, I think we'd be able to see, like, if we did a P or something. Anyway, it's not necessarily working with the P like I thought it would. But anyway, if you position relative, we can move it relative to where it used to be, but it's going to leave empty space. And we don't want that because we have content that's going to need to take up the space. And so what we'll do instead is position absolute because we want to position it relative to its parent being this profile photo wrapper. But also we need to remember that position absolute positions it relative to the first parent that is positioned. And if no parents are positioned, it goes all the way up to the body. In this case, we haven't positioned anything else yet. None of its parents are positioned. So what we need to do is take this profile photo wrapper and position that relative. which won't actually do anything because we're not actually changing any of the offsets. We're just setting it to position relative. And that's going to allow us to do this position absolute. Let me just show you what happens if we didn't do that. If we didn't do position relative and we did absolute here, and then said, let's say we did bottom 10 pixels or something. So we're offsetting it from the bottom by 10 pixels, so it should move up 10 pixels. And notice it's actually 10 pixels from the bottom of the body. It would probably be a little bit clearer if we do top. Yeah, it's not really having the effect that I wanted there, but that's okay. We're still going to do position relative here. And then let's see, that looks like it's in the same place. Great. But let's do bottom and see how much we need to offset it by the bottom, from the bottom. I think we actually want to do negative. So if we look at this example, yeah, so it comes down a little bit, maybe, I don't know, 6 pixels or so. So let's do negative 6 pixels from the bottom. That's not quite doing what we want yet. Let's just inspect it and see how much we need to do here. Yeah, so here's the problem, I think, is that, you know, we've got our container and everything that has a certain height image. So let's just add to this here to get it down where we need to. Maybe around negative 60 pixels will pull it down enough. So negative 60. Get rid of that extra text we don't care about. And see how we're looking. Okay, cool, looks pretty good. So now let's think about our links here. So we've got tweets, following, followers, and likes. So each one of these is a link. Probably use spans inside our links to make, you know, these different, the sort of label here. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if Bootstrap allows us, you know, gives us anything useful. Not sure that it does. Let's see. Position. Gives us this vertical line, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I think we're just going to have to sort this out ourselves. Just trying to think about how. So each one of these is a link. Yeah. And the labels are part of the link too. This keeps freezing on me. So let's just go ahead and sketch it out first. So we also sort of have a list here. Well, let's not get too fancy yet. So a href. Let's also give it a class of profile stats, maybe. And then we have tweets. And then maybe let's do a span for the number. In this case, Rose has tweeted 200 or 320 times. Okay, now let's just copy this 4 times. What else do we have? Following, followers, and likes. Rose is very popular, so let's say she has 600 people that she's following. She has 900 followers, and say she has 1,000 likes. Okay, so let's see what we've got so far. This isn't going to be close yet, but it's going to give us kind of the raw material to work with. Okay, so not terrible. One thing we could do would be to use columns for this. So we could kind of create subcolumns for each of these to kind of get them to space out properly. But we could also float them and give them some spacing. So let's start off trying that way. So let's take our, let's see, what profile stats. Let's float left, and let's give them a width of 60 pixels or so, maybe. That may not matter. Yeah, so they're kind of overlapping, but that's okay. Let's take off the width for now. Just see what it looks like with them floated left. Okay, so it kind of overflows. That's okay. Let's take our, one thing we could do would be to put a break tag here, in between tweets and the number. But instead, let's try and make this span display block to have it get a new line. So let's do profile stats span and display block and see if that pops that span down to the new line. Okay, good. That's pretty good. Let's also center it. So margin 0 pixel auto. See if that works. Yeah, that's not working, but we could do text align center as well. That'll probably work better. Okay, cool. Now we can think about the width for these. So these profile stats, let's say width 100 pixels. It's a little bit too wide. 50. Not wide enough. Maybe do 70. Okay, it's being a little wider, and let's actually go ahead and change these column width. So let's give this some more space. So if we look at Bootstrap and go to our layout, I believe, and go to grid, it'll show us the, so if you just use column or column small, it's going to be evenly spaced. You can use column 4. So let's do column 4 here. do column 6 here, and then column 2 here. So it needs to equal 12. So this one's going to be the same that it already did. This one's going to be a little bit wider, and this one's going to be a little bit smaller. Okay, nice. So that pops this over here. So now we've got a little bit more room to work with. So let's go ahead and make these 90 pixels wide. Could also, you know, instead of having them be so much wider, in fact, maybe we should do this. Let's dial it back down to 80. And let's just give them some margin. So then we'll say margin, and let's do, we don't really care about top and bottom, so let's do 10. Let's do 0 pixels, 10 pixels. Okay, that's getting pretty close. Maybe a little, yeah, a little too spaced out. Maybe we'll change this from 10 to like 4 or something. Okay, that's getting a little closer. So now we need to deal with this default link styling. We want to remove that and kind of do some of our own. So the span is actually bigger. So let's take the span and make that font size maybe 1.4 em. Let's also take our profile stats. Texture duration none. Color. These are just kind of a dark gray by default, right? The span's even darker, but so yeah, that's just kind of like a maybe let's call it 666. And the span, actually, let's do 999 for this, and the span will be 666. And this one, let's do font size is maybe 0.8 ems. So we're going to dial that down just a little bit. Okay, that's getting there. I think they need to be a little bit darker. So let's do 666 and maybe 444 here. Let's also go ahead and do a little bit of top margin to bring them down a little bit. So maybe 6 pixels or so. Okay, cool. So that's getting a lot closer. You know, we kind of want to move the spans up a little bit to be a little bit closer to the label. So we can do that with position relative. And then top like -4 pixels or something to, you know, offset them a negative amount from the top, which is going to move them up. That's good. Let's even add maybe another 2 pixels margin top here, so 8. Oh, you know what? That's going to be top and bottom. So let's break that out. Margin top is 8 pixels. Margin left 4 pixels. Margin right 4 pixels. Okay, good. That's good in there. We don't want to do the underline on hover. Instead, we just want to change the color. So find one of our blue colors, like from the tweet button. Technically, let's do profile stats hover span, because we really only want to change the color of the span. Do that, and then let's also do like a border bottom with that color to get that kind of effect that they have there. See where we're probably going to have to push that down a little bit to work. Okay, that's pretty close. It's a little bit annoying how somehow the position of our profile image is tied to the height of this, which is a little bit annoying. Let's add 2 pixels margin bottom, it looks like. Actually, no, we don't want. Let's do 2 more here. Push it down further rather than making it bigger. There we go. A little bit closer. Technically, yeah, it looks right. It's actually super weird that the profile image here, I think it's probably since we're positioning it from the bottom, let's instead do top. Let's do negative. Yeah, because then it's not going to be affected. So negative 110. Okay. Keep hitting that wrong one there. Okay. So we're looking pretty good. When we hover, looks like the actual A changes color too. That's okay, but it does the border bottom. Pretty cool. Now let's think about the follow button. That's just going to be a normal button, and Bootstrap even gives us a outlined button that we can use. So we can go to buttons, scroll down a little bit. It's got outlined buttons, so we're going to stick with this primary. So we'll just copy this whole thing and put it right here. And follow. Oops. Let's also give this an ID follow button, just so we can change the color. See what it looks like. Okay. We want it to be, I believe, the same color as the tweet button, save for the hover color. But the border color is going to be the same as the tweet button, as well as the text color. So let's deal with that. So let's take our follow button. Going to make a border color. We trust what Bootstrap's done otherwise with the border. We only really care about changing the color, and we're going to change it to the same thing here. Also going to change the text color to that. We're also probably going to need to move it down a little bit. Oh, let's do border radius. Let's see, what did we use for the tweet button? 20 pixels. Okay. Okay, cool. So we just need to move it down, and we need to change the hover. So, I like to use the inspector for this kind of thing. Margin top. And let's do maybe 20 pixels. Nope. 10 pixels. That looks right about what we want. Just copy this. That's pretty good, really. It's a little bit wider, so we could even add some padding left and padding right. So, oops. Margin top 10 pixels, and let's do padding, and let's do 0 pixels, maybe 5 pixels or so to add some left and right padding. Let's also do follow button hover, and background color we want to be whatever this guy is. See if it will tell us. I think so far it's just regular. I think you can do sometimes, I believe we can say toggle pseudo classes hover. Now maybe we can see, okay, here's the background color here. So yeah, that's super useful. This little button right here, this is in Firefox. It might be a little bit different in Chrome, but I'm pretty sure you can do the same thing. Toggle pseudo classes, so you can basically have it be in hover state, or in active state, or in focus. Super, super useful. And then these CSS properties you see here are what's in effect for that pseudo class. So super, super useful. So now we know the background color. There was something else. Well, let's go ahead and save that and see what it looks like. Well, we've messed up our padding, so that's okay. The hover is great, though. That looks good. So by setting padding 0 pixels, we've actually overridden Bootstrap's default, and we don't really want to do that. Instead, let's just set the width a little bit wider, maybe 60 pixels or so, and see how that looks. Nope, that's not enough. Make it 100. Oops. There we go. That's a lot better. So that's a little bit more, a little bit closer to this file. If anything, we could make it bold. I'll way bold. I feel like the font size is a little bit big. 1M might not be done and get down much. Yeah, so let's say like 0.8 maybe. Yeah, that's pretty close. That's really close, actually. That's pretty good. Not going to worry about this little, 3-circle drop down here. But overall, at this point, we're pretty darn close. There's a couple little things you could probably tweak. If you wanted to, the search Twitter placeholder is a little bit too large, so if you want to do some Googling and figure out how to style a placeholder, could also, change the font sizes of these a little bit. I think they're a little bit, not necessarily small. They could be bold, I guess, and actually they're a little bit big and they should be bold. So you might want to do that. Make them a little bit smaller, make them bold so they stand out a little bit more. We just kind of haphazardly positioned, our Twitter icon. The search button and the tweet button are also probably a little too big. And we can also add our profile image up here as a circle. You can do that if you'd like. But overall, we've got a pretty good starting place at this point. So, the next steps we'll go ahead and run through real quick. Adding, where we would go from here. So maybe we're going to do a div that's a container, because we're going to create now our 2-column layout for the profile stuff on the left and the tweets on the right. So div class container, div class is row. And now we can do, maybe let's even use sections for these. Call for. Let's also give this an ID profile. And then section class, call 8. ID is tweet. Let's just call it tweets. And then let's put some text in here. Profile info tweets. And let's see how that looks. Okay, cool. So obviously we're going to need to add a little bit of margin there to, push that content down, below our profile image. But overall, we now have our 2 columns. So you can start filling in, this profile info here in that section and start filling out your tweets here in that section. But at this point, you've got a really good baseline to work with, a good kind of starting point. I'm going to kind of show the code here slowly. If you want to, if I've been going too fast for you, you can pause the video at this point as I slowly scroll through this code if you need to kind of see what I did. These are the script tags we use to load in font awesome. This is the Bootstrap CSS that we got from getbootstrap.com. This is just loading in our own style sheet. This is all the navbar stuff. This is just kind of the default, the navbar, one of the examples. We just copied the example and modified a few things. This here, you don't really need all of these properties. This is all kind of related to the toggle thing if you're for mobile, but we're not really too concerned about mobile at this point. So honestly, we can even get rid of this whole button. That's not really necessary. We're not going to see that anymore, on mobile now without that. But it's not necessary for our needs. Same with, we can get rid of this ID. This was just in there by default. So we've got that. We've got our navbar nav, this UL. Each LI is a link. We've used the I with classes for font awesome, and then indicating which icon we want to use. with a space between the icon and the link. Down here we've got our A with navbar brand with the Twitter icon. This is our form for the search. And then we've got the tweet button. Then down here we use the header HTML5 element. We've got a cover photo wrapper. We've got our image. We've got a div for the profile photo wrapper. We set up a container with a row and then a 4-width column for our profile photo image. We set up a 6-width column for our profile stats, and we used an A for each of those with a span for the stat itself. Then we created a 2-span column for our follow button. So it looks like that. We used the button outline primary class from Bootstrap for that. Close all of our divs and our header. We created a new container div with a row div and then a section with 4 columns for the profile info and a section with 8 columns for the tweets. And then on the CSS side, a little bit more lengthy, but again, you can pause the video if you need to, if you missed a specific step. We've added some margin top to our body to account for our header. We've set the background color of the body to kind of that, really light blue-gray color. We've set our navbar with white background color and a border bottom. If you really want to go above and beyond, you could change this border bottom to a box shadow, which I think is what they're actually using. It's very, very subtle difference between, the 1 pixel bottom border and a drop shadow, but it will make a difference. We've positioned the navbar brand, which is our Twitter icon. Might even just include a comment here. Probably should include more comments overall. So that's our Twitter icon. This is the actual icon itself that we've changed the color of to the nice Twitter blue. We've taken our search input, which is a form input. We've changed the background color, set the border radius, set the border. We've also styled it when it's in focus, which is when the user's, selected it and is typing things. We've styled our tweet button, set the background color. We've also made it more circular with border radius. And we've changed the background color for hover. We've taken our cover photo wrapper and given it a height and overflow hidden. So the image may extend beyond that, but it's only going to show 300 pixels worth of height. And then our image itself, we've set it to width 100%, so it takes the full width. For the profile photo wrapper, we've set background color to white, so this is the whole bar that goes across that has the profile photo and the stats and the follow button. We've set a bottom border. Again, you could do box shadow here if you want to be extra fancy, because I think that's what Twitter is really using. We've set the height. We've also set position relative, simply so that we can adjust we can position the actual image absolutely. So we've targeted the actual image itself. Oops. We've set width and height. We've set the border radius to half of the height and width, which is going to make it circular. We've added a white border around it, and we've positioned it absolutely, which is going to be within this wrapper div. For the profile stats, each one of these is an A. Again, that's a good place to comment. Each is a link, contains, each is a link, followers, likes, tweets, I think is the other one. Cool. I like to add a comment anytime, like these here, this profile photo ID, that's pretty obvious what it is. We know it's a profile photo. This profile stats, especially since it's a class, it's hard to know, what each of these things is, but here we know each one is a link. So we've floated them all left, text align center. We've set the width. We've done some margin to position them how we want. We've removed the default underline with text decoration because this is an A. We've set the color and we've made it a little bit smaller. We've styled it on hover, so again we've removed the underlining, and we've also set border bottom with this blue color on hover. And then we've also styled the span. So again, this is a little tricky. I don't think I really covered this in class, but we can target, this class profile stats is the A, and we target the A in the hover state, but then we're adding an additional element to our selector of the span, so it's really tricky. So we're targeting the actual span inside of the hovered A, if that makes sense, and we're changing the color of that. Really, I guess, I think I noticed that, when we do this, when we hover, it also changes the color of following, so we could also say here, color on hover and see if that fixes that. Yeah, there you go. So now it only changes the color of the span and not the color of the label. Okay, we've also styled those spans, so we've set them to display blocks so that they get a new line. Because remember, span by default is an inline element, so it's just going to be in line with the text in the link. We've done margin, which I don't think we actually need that since it's text align center now. I think it's going to work okay without that. Yep. We've set it to a little bit bigger font size, changed the color, and we've also moved it up just a little bit with position relative. We've taken the follow button, just kind of customized it, again, made it rounded, pushed it down a little bit, made it a little bit wider, made the font size a little bit smaller, and we've also changed the background color on hover. So again, we haven't done any CSS for the column layouts. That's just all by default through Bootstrap by using these column classes. So okay, so the next video will cover getting into this profile info and start to build out this section of the page. All right, thanks.